I've been thinking recently, if I could only choose one designer fragrance brand to keep for life, which would it be? I could just tell you right now, but then this video would be a short, and shorts are crap for AdSense. So we're gonna have a little bit of fun and go through my process. If you want to know which designer fragrance brand I would keep for life, stay tuned. Where my process starts is first establishing which are my favourite designer fragrances, and then go from there. I'm just going to tell you right now that not all designer fragrance brands are featured in this video, so if you start getting upset that your favourite brand isn't mentioned, that's alright, it's just not one of my favourite brands. When I've done these videos about which designer fragrances I would keep for life, this is always on there. This is one of my favourite designer fragrances of all time. I think many of you will agree, this is Viktor and Rolf's Spice Bomb Extreme. I adore this fragrance. I can't imagine living in a world where I couldn't wear it. But as good as you and I may think this fragrance is Viktor and Rolf a brand that you would keep for life? Think about it. Are there any other fragrances that are up there on the God tier with this one? Sure, there's some great fragrances, the original Spice Bomb, Infrared. And I think that's about it. The fragrance brand that I choose to keep for life has to have the most God tier fragrances. Viktor and Rolf is out. Same with Prada. Prada's a great brand, got some fantastic fragrances. I think Prada L'Homme Intense are 10 out of 10s. Are there any other that are as good as these? Sure, maybe there's some 8s and some 9s. The Luna Rossa line, really solid, enjoy those fragrances. But is there enough variety in the brand? Is there enough choice? I don't think there is, and for me, there aren't enough God tier fragrances. Prada L'Homme, I'm gonna miss you, but Prada's out. Now to the brand that arguably I would not have ever got into fragrances if it weren't for this one. This has been my signature scent for the longest time in my life, probably over a decade. If you know me, if you know my channel, you know that this is Jean-Paul Gaultier's La Malle. Maybe this fragrance is a little bit played out these days, but we've still got Ultra Malle, La Malle Elixir, La Malle Le Parfum, fantastic fragrances. But beyond those, are there any other God tier fragrances in the Jean-Paul Gaultier brand? The Scandals, like them, solid. God tier? No. Le Beau's, solid, enjoy wearing them, but are they 10 out of 10s? Does this brand have a wide range of choice? Does it cater to my needs? I love the note of tobacco. I love darker fragrances. I love really fresh fragrances. There are a couple of fresher ones, but are there really any true fresh fragrances in the brand? Especially now Eau Fraiche, one of my favorites, is discontinued. There just is not enough choice and not enough variety, not enough God tier 10 out of 10 fragrances. Jean-Paul Gaultier is out. Giorgio Armani. Acqua di Gio Profumo, or Parfum, is one of my favorite all-time designer fragrances. Love this one for summer, definitely one of my favorite summer fragrances. I also love Code Profumo. These two are both 10 out of 10 fragrances. Unfortunately, this one is now discontinued. We've got the other Code fragrances. I enjoy the EDP and the Parfum, but I don't like them enough. 8 out of 10s, which is great, but it's not God tier. And even if the other codes were amazing, is there enough else in the line to justify this being the only brand you would keep for life? No, Giorgio Armani's out. I gotta hold my hands up and say I am not that familiar with the Armani Privé line. I have smelt a few, and from what I can remember, they did smell really good, but I can only make my decision based on what I know and what I've smelled. What do you think? Do you know the Armani Privé line? Is it good enough to swing everything into Armani's favour for that to be the only brand you would keep for life? Sticking with Armani and Emporio Armani, their flagship line is Stronger With You. Great fragrances, absolutely, intensely. I love these, but are they that good? Are they God tier? And after these, is there anything else in the brand that would make you want to keep Emporio Armani for life? I doubt it. Emporio, the only brand left, the only brand I would keep for life, it's gotta be Paco Rabanne. No, it's not. Okay, Paco Rabanne. Great brand, lots of releases, quite a bit of variety. Some of the Invictus fragrances are very good. I do really enjoy the 1 million line. They can be quite creative, they can take a few risks. But unfortunately, I wouldn't say anything that Paco Rabanne has made or anything that I've smelled or owned would make me think the brand is good enough to be the only one I would keep for life. How about you? Do you think Paco Rabanne is a good enough brand? Would you be happy with only that brand to keep for life? I guess you'd have Phantom. Paco Rabanne, out. Azzaro, one of my favourite all-time designers. Wanted by Night, superb, love this. In fact, the whole Wanted line is pretty good. There's some great fragrances, but what have we got beyond the Wanteds? Chrome? Pour Homme? Are they good enough? Is there enough choice, enough variety? Azzaro, out. Here's a pretty big fragrance brand that's been going a long time, one of the most famous designer brands, Dolce and Gabbana. The one and the variations of that fragrance. I do really enjoy some of the summer light blue line, light blue Eau Intense, one of my absolute all-time favorite designer fragrances. After that, there's a few bits and pieces, but I gotta say, nothing that makes me get excited enough about the brand for it to be the only one that I would keep for life. Light blue, probably the best thing for me about the brand, but there are other brands that have amazing fresher fragrances, but their variety and their quality and their choice is far greater than D&G. Out. Now this one was probably the most difficult brand to choose not to keep for life, because it would mean not wearing Allure Homme Sport or Extreme, Bleu de Chanel, EDP, Egoist. If you've not already worked it out, I'm talking about Chanel. 10 out of 10 fragrances, the ones I've just mentioned. I love them. But the problem with Chanel is they don't release many fragrances. Some would say that is a good thing, that they only release really good fragrances, and I would say their hit rate is probably pretty high. But when you come to choose from the Chanel lineup, is there enough choice? I love sweeter, darker, boozier fragrances, and that's not really something that Chanel do. I know that's not their brand in terms of this level of their designer fragrances, but it's something that I would need from a designer fragrance brand if I was going to choose them for life. So unfortunately, because of the lack of choice with Chanel, as good as their existing fragrances are, I've got to say, Chanel out. Yes, of course, there is the higher end exclusives line. I'm not massively familiar with it. I have smelled pretty much all of them, I think, at one time or another, and there were a couple where I thought, you know, probably 10 out of 10s. But when you look at the range of their fragrances, from dark all the way to light and everything in between, the choice for me with Chanel is not as good as a couple of the other brands that I'm about to talk about. Dior. Now we're talking. There are so many fragrances from this brand that I love, from the darker, heavier Dior Homme Parfum all the way to the other end of the spectrum, to the fresh Dior Homme Cologne. All bases are covered. Eau Sauvage Parfum is a quintessential, masculine, sophisticated fragrance. A 10 out of 10 masterpiece. Dior Homme, oh, sadly discontinued, but I love this fragrance. Sauvage Elixir, both versions of Dior Homme and Dior Homme Sport. Probably my favorite designer fragrance of all time, Dior Homme Intense. And they're just the god tier fragrances. On the next level down, which isn't far behind, we've got the Fahrenheits, we've got the other Sauvages. So Dior, quite a few releases, more than Chanel, and I would say their hit rate is higher. Their choice and variety is better. Dior is an amazing brand. I'm in love with it, but is it the one I would keep for life? Well, there's one more brand to talk about. Oud Wood, Tobacco Oud, Neroli Portofino, Tuscan Leather, Ombre Leather, Noir Extreme. We're talking about Tom Ford. Tom Ford has my favourite note of tobacco covered with the already mentioned Tobacco Oud and Tobacco Vanille. They have a great choice of blue, green, red fragrances. Any type of fragrance you could think of, Tom Ford pretty much do it. Apart from one, which I'll go into in just a minute, but the variety and choice of this brand is insane. And even if, as I get older, my tastes develop and change, there will still be something within the brand of Tom Ford that will cater to my tastes. And that is one of the biggest reasons why I have chosen Tom Ford as my only brand to keep for life, because it has everything that I love now, it has everything that I may love in the future, and more. There was almost a plot twist here, because I'd made my decision about Tom Ford being the brand I would keep for life, and then suddenly I realised that would mean I could no longer wear Dior Homme Intense, Dior Homme Parfum, those beautiful powdery iris fragrances. One of my favourite notes, I adore them. It would be a real struggle to not have those. I almost put Dior as my number one purely based on being able to wear Dior Homme Intense for the rest of my life. But that plot twist didn't quite happen. Even with Dior's Privé collection, I still think that there is a greater choice, greater variety in the Tom Ford brand. By the way, do you know of anything within the brand of Tom Ford that has that powdery iris like in the Dior Homme line? I don't think I own any. I don't think I've smelled any. I haven't smelled absolutely everything from the brand, so if there's something out there that might satiate my desire for that powdery iris within Tom Ford, down in the comments please, ASAP. Tom Ford contains some of my all-time favourites. The choice is incredible, and so many of their scents are statement makers and game changers. So many for me are 10 out of 10s. Of course, not every Tom Ford fragrance is a masterpiece or a 10 out of 10 or even one of my favourites. And you could easily argue that in recent times the hit rate of Tom Ford fragrances isn't what it once was. But despite that, compared to all the other brands, the brand of Tom Ford is the one that ticks most of my boxes. There you go. Good old Thomas Ford, my designer brand for life. Do have to say, if you took away the higher end private collections of any of these brands, I think probably Dior would have been the one. But these higher end luxury brands still have that designer name stamped on there. In my mind, they are still designer fragrances and should still be considered when you're deciding which designer brand to keep for life. So sorry Dior, you will have to settle with a very, very close second place. Let me know what you think. Which is your favourite designer fragrance brand to keep for life? Have I missed any massive ones off this list? Have I not talked about your favourite? Let me know what you think and put your favourite designer fragrance brand that you would keep for life down there in those comments. Hope you liked this video. Hope you found it fun and interesting and informative. If you did, hit like, subscribe if you haven't already, and if you do all that, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye. Is that all right, Tom? I'll give you my bank details.